management accounting. So we have created the controlling area, and we also have assigned the same thing to our company code, right? So maintain controlling area. So double click on this maintain controlling area, right? Our controlling area is 1248, and to this 1248 we have assigned our company code 1248. So this way both company code and controlling area are connected. So both of them on the same page now. So within that particular controlling area, we have these many company codes. As I mentioned, a controlling area may have multiple company codes, and uh, a operating concern may have multiple controlling areas. So that's the sequence. So we have maintained this thing. Okay, we have created our controlling area and assigned to our company code. Now go back to the activate components and control indicators. So double click on components and controlling indicators. It means what are the components that we want to activate in controlling area. So what are the components, such as, do you want to activate cost center? Do you want to activate internal order? And what are the other things that you want to activate within the controlling area? So this is the place where we will act. I mean, this is not only the place we have the option to activate, but in the relevant step we can do, such as, suppose if I don't activate the cost center here, during the cost center accounting I can activate over there. And if I don't activate the internal order, I have an option to activate it during the internal order configuration. So I'll have the relevant places where I can activate these components, or we can activate all together here in this. So just double click on the activate components. You have this. So from which year you want this to be activated. So go to new entries. I'll say 2015. I want this to be activated from 2015 until all nines, double nine, double nine. So do you want to activate cost center? Yes, we can activate it. Do you want to activate activity type? Yes, I do want. Order management, it's nothing but internal order. Commitment management is not required. Account based costing, that we will see later. I mean, this is basically profit center, profitability analysis, that we will see later. And do you want to activate say projects, sales orders? You can activate. Cost objects is a different concept. Real estate management, if you want to activate, you can activate. With commitment management, if you want, you can activate. Now, so if you consider cost center hierarchies, alternative hierarchies, you have an option to create all of them. Alternative profit center hierarchy 1, alternative profit center hierarchy 2, similarly cost center hierarchy 1, and the other one is cost center alternative hierarchy. So if you want, this is basically for reporting purpose. If you want to create, apart from the standard hierarchy we have seen yesterday in our controlling, the maintain controlling area. So there we have seen the standard cost center hierarchy. Apart from that, you have an option to create two more cost center hierarchies. This is basically for reporting purposes. So I don't want to do that. Just I'm saving, save it. So let's go back to the basic controlling area settings, where we can find the cost center standard hierarchy. It's taking time. Okay, now I'm going back to the controlling. See, if you see over here, it is activated from 2015 until 9999. Okay, so I'm going back to the controlling area 1248, selecting the same, going into details. I would be able to see certain other properties, right? So here you can see standard hierarchy. Apart from this standard hierarchy, if you want to create additional, then we will be creating the alternative standard hierarchies, or simply we call it as alternative hierarchies.
Hi Nanda.
Yes.
Yeah, microphone, please.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, thank you, thank you.
How is it now? How is it now?
Better. Yeah, thank you,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay. So apart from the standard hierarchy, if you want to create some additional hierarchies just for the reporting purpose, this is the place where we have an option. Okay, so we can create additional hierarchies for the reporting purpose. Okay, so what we have done, we have created the controlling area and maintain some control indicators, and we have activated some control indicators, and also we have linked this controlling area to our company code. Back. Okay, now maintain number ranges for controlling documents. Number ranges for controlling documents. Why we require these controlling documents? When we are posting, we have seen this point, right? So this is basically, if we call it as, if we call this as finance, and if we call this as controlling, this is finance and this is controlling. Okay. So in finance, whenever I'm posting any transaction as GL, that will trigger the car controlling. When does this get triggered? When does this get triggered? It triggers, it triggers when it is a cost element. When it is a cost element, right? When it is a cost element. So what are the GLs that I can consider as a cost elements? I can consider all my expenses, okay, expenses and incomes. I can consider these two types of GLs as my cost elements. Okay, how can I make this as a cost element while creating the expenses and incomes? I have an option to enter a field called cost element category. Cost element category. So this cost element category field will pop up as soon as we create our operating concern, as soon as we create our operating concern, and once we assign the same sorry, as soon as we create a controlling area and the same is assigned to our company code, then in GL master FS00 we will have that thing will come up. So let me just create 5 lakhs. If I talk about 5 lakhs, I think 5 lakhs is material consumption. Just let's see primary cost and revenues, and I think it is material consumption, but anyways, let's find out that material consumption. Yes, it is material consumption, raw material consumption, raw material consumption. And in control data, when you go here, you will find the same thing. I'm just scrolling down. Earlier, we were not finding this cost element category field. Now we can see the same thing, cost element category. If you select over here, you will have 01. for primary cost, 03 for accruals, 04 for I mean this again for actuals, accruals for actuals, 11 for revenues, and 12 for sales deductions. Apart from that, we have external settlement. We will use this thing during our fixed assets concept. But primarily you will have to consider 01 for expenses, 11 for revenues, 12 for sales deductions. So metal consumption is an expenses, so select this one. Okay, so it's the USD and balance in local currency, and create in bank and interest. We have a separate field status group for metal consumption. If you see over here, metal consumption 0 Z003, and you can also find some separate group for material accounts. Yeah, this is the one. So this is used in the case of material related GLs representing the balance sheet. Balance sheet material GLs should have Z006, and profit and loss material related GLs should have Z003. So since this is a expenses GL, so I'm considering this Z003. Save. Make an entry in the profit and loss account. Why it is expecting? Because this is a profit and loss account, right? This raw material consumption is a profit and loss account, and it is expecting which which retained earnings account do you want to consider? Do you want to consider X or Y? So I'm just considering X. Save it. That's it. Data saved. So the moment we create any controlling area, and once we assign that to our company code, then we will have a field called cost element category appear. This is important. And based on the cost element category, the GLs of finance will get converted into cost element. And when we are posting any transaction to these expenses account or incomes account with the help of cost element category, the value will move on to the controlling. Okay, so the process of this, I mean, when we are posting transactions in the finance using expenses and incomes, that will be moved into controlling. This is what we call it as primary expenses. Primary expenses, we call them as primary expenses, primary transactions. Now while posting the transactions, while posting these transactions, system expects one object, one object. It's called CO object, controlling object. So at the moment, let's consider cost center. So the moment you are considering as an expenses transaction, since it is a cost element, it has a cost element category. It means since it is a cost element expects an object, CO object. At the moment, let's consider cost center. So it means the moment I consider a cost center within the controlling, so what happens is we will have different objects. Let's say cost center, let's say production order, let us say sales order. Okay, let us say sales order, and let me consider an internal order and profitability segment. So this is cost center, and this is WBS, or you can have WBS, you can have production order, you can have sales order, you can have internal order, you can have profitability segment. Like we have different, the cost objects. Okay, so since I'm posting an expenses expenses has a cost element category, it means this expenses GL is also considered as a expenses cost element in controlling area, and while posting the transaction in finance, system expects a cost center. So it will go, I mean, this transaction will go and sit in the cost center in controlling area. Now, this process, I mean, posting a finance transaction and moving into controlling is called primary expenses, primary allocation, primary expenses. And this transaction will go and sit in cost center. And from here, if I want to move to production order, or from here, if I want to move to profitability segment or cost center to internal order and cost center to sales order, this process is called secondary distribution, secondary postings. Okay, so it means we have two types of controlling transactions here. One is transactions coming from the other modules such as FI, MM, SD, HCM, whatever. Okay, when the transactions are coming from the other modules, that is called as a primary expenses, primary cost process, and the process, the moving of this process from one object to the other object within the controlling is called secondary cost, secondary distribution. So in all the cases, we require a document number, whether it is a primary or secondary, we require controlling document. So the controlling document comes from this document number range, controlling document number range. Maintain number ranges for controlling documents. Okay, so there is some certain thing, there is certain concept that we will have to discuss in the controlling documents. We can see internally generated document number and the document number generated out of the controlling number ranges that we are maintaining, that we will discuss during the posting of the transaction. While posting of the transaction, we will see internally generated number and the number generated from the range that we have entered over here. Okay, so maintain number ranges for controlling documents. Path is the same, just execute. The same, this is also there. These three things are all, these three things, I mean, maintain controlling area, maintain number range, maintain version. These three are there in ECC. And in S4, you will find some difference in the define ledger for CO version. And also you can see subsequent assignment of company code to controlling area. These are the two additional steps that you can see here. Okay, fine. So maintain number ranges for controlling documents, just execute. The transaction code is KANK, which is important for us, KANK. Now give our controlling area 1248 and just check if at all we have any intervals. No interval exists, it says as no interval exists. And if you want to see, you can also see from here intervals. This is for change, this is for display, and this is for the number range status. Of course, since we don't have here, nothing is appeared. Okay, so now in order to maintain that, you can also see over here overview. In the overview, we can see the number ranges. What are the number ranges we have for particular transactions? So these are the transactions we call as controlling business transactions. For every transaction, when you're posting from finance and when it is updating, it expects a business transaction. So for every transaction happening in the controlling, whether it is happening within the controlling or whether it is happening from the other modules. For every transaction there will be an associated business transaction. This is what we call it as controlling business transactions. So these are all the business transactions. These are all the business transactions. Okay, so these are all the business transactions you can find here. These are all the business transactions. I think there are a couple of duplications. Not these many will be there, but you will find it. Okay, and if you see over here, okay, you can see COIN. What it is? CO, through postings from FI. It means when you are posting a transaction in FI, and if it is updating the controlling, then the business transaction that it consider is COIN. Okay, and okay, so in order to have our own, you can do it from here. There is an option, you can do it from here, or you can do it from, you can do it from here, but I'm not finding it there. Okay, but anyways, so if you want to have your own, uh, here you can see the overview, and here it is change groups, right? So this is 1248 is the one that is assigned default, but we can create our own. Okay, we can create our own. So these are the business transactions that you can see. Okay, you can see them. Now to have our own, just select create group. Create group, I will say controlling document numbers for 1248. And what is the range that we are going to give? I'll say 1 lakh to all nines. I'm just mentioning, and just save. Back. Okay, now what are we going to do? If you scroll down, you can find here 124801. This is the one that we have created just now, and controlling document numbers for 1248. Now, how do I assign these business transactions to my controlling number range? So the process is like this. Select the business transaction, okay? And here, select the business transaction, select this assign element group, and you can find it over here. Just double click on this. Double click on the one that you want to consider, 1248. That's it. You will not be finding it over here. And when you scroll down, you will be finding the same thing. So all you just need is either you can double click on this, or select here, select this, and double click here, or double click here, select the group it says, yeah, select this thing, select here, double click here. Okay, select here, select here, select here. Okay, this is how you will have to do. Okay, so select here, select here. Like that, we will have to assign each and everything. If you don't assign, then while posting the transaction, system will stop us. So what I'm going to do is, I'm not going to assign any of these. I'll just come out, I'm not saving it just to want to show you the error. So if you scroll down, you will not be finding any business transaction assigned. I want to show you the importance of this business transaction. So while posting a transaction, considering the expenses GL, system will throw up an error. Then I will come back and maintain over here. So at the moment I've just maintained the number range. So I can go back and check the number ranges. And here it says as number range status. Okay, so this is basically the number ranges controlling document number ranges. Now coming to the versions, maintain versions. So in controlling, we can create as many versions as you want, but not in the case of actuals. Normally we will maintain, I mean, of course, we require a version for actuals as well, but normally we will maintain multiple versions for our budgets, for our plan values. So what way this will help us? Now, if I see, I have different planning strategies. Okay, planning strategy in the sense, for January, I have my plan as 1000. For February, I have 1500. And for March, I have 1700. And for April, I have 1000. For May, let's say I have 1200. Like that, we have yearly, I mean, we have month-wise planning. And I have the other plan like quarterly. Let's say Jan to March, I have 2500. Then April to June, I have, let's say, 3000. June to, let's say, August, I have, say, 2750. Like quarterly, I have half yearly, let's say Jan to June, 5500. July to December, let's say 10,000. Then I have Jan to December, which is nothing but yearly plan. Now I have these many types of plannings. How can I make a segregation in all these? How can I view my reports? I'm posting monthly planning, quarterly planning, half yearly planning, and yearly planning. I want to post. Then how can I see my planning details individually for each of these categories? I can use a concept called version. I will create version 1 for monthly. I will create version 2 for quarterly. I will create version 3 for half yearly. I'll create version 4 for yearly. What I'm going to do in this case, the moment I consider version in the report, I would be able to see monthly planning. The moment I say in my report version as 4, then I would be able to see yearly planning. So version will segregate these categories, the types of the types of planning. Okay, so that is the main purpose of version. Version 0, version we have, this is a standard one. This is applicable for both actuals and plans. So but apart from that, if you want to have some other versions, you can create as many versions as you want. But 0 will take care of both actuals and plan, which is a standard version. Okay, Let us get into that. Maintain versions, the path is the same, just execute. Here, as I mentioned, 0 is the version which is applicable for plan and actuals. It also takes care of work in progress, nothing but result analysis and variance. It also takes care of these two things, but basically this is what you need to remember. Okay, plan and actuals. Of course, we can use it for variance and as well as work in progress. Exclusive use. You want to use it for zero in the sense only for plan and actuals, and you want to use it in the budget control system and funds management. This is the additional concept that you have in S4 system. So where do you want to consider this version in addition to that? I mean, exclusively you can use it for some purpose like cost estimate in maintenance order, PM order. It is called PM order. So do you want to use both actuals, plan, this version for in the case of cost estimate for maintenance order, it means plant and maintenance order. PM order, we call it as PM order. Or do you want to use it for cost forecast? Where do you want to use this exclusively? If I don't mention anything, it means it is applicable for all. You can use this for anything. Okay, this is the new concept that we have in S4. So that's how the version helps in the controlling. So select the version. So we have not started the operating concern, so ignore it. Profit center we have not done, so ignore it. Controlling area. So we are in the controlling area. Select the version, settings for each fiscal year. So controlling area version 0, enter, and from which year you want this to be activated. You cannot plan for the previous year. You can plan for the current year and future period, future years. So that is the reason why it will consider the current year. And version locked, it will be locked. Okay, and typically you can see 5 years of information. By default, as soon as we activate the version, system will consider 5 years from the current year, and you can add few more years by going into new entries. Okay, so I'm just selecting the same thing, going into details. I mean, what properties we have here. Basically for planning and price calculation, these are the two tabs we have. Version is logged. Integrated planning. What is the use of integrated planning? If you want to plan, if you want to plan your data, and the data can be loaded in two ways. One is a manual option, the other one is the Excel upload. Do you want to use Excel upload or do you want to do the manual planning? If you want to do the Excel planning, we will have some more steps to do that. And if you want to do manual planning, you don't have to do anything. So that is for integrated planning. Copying allowed. Do you want to copy from version to the version, from one year to the from the previous year to year? Then you will be selecting. So basically the version copying, it is called as version copy. Then what exchange rate type do we want to use? Since we are doing this for planning, so let's pick up this as P. And what is the value date? I mean, from which date do you want this to be considered? So I'm saying 1/1/2019. Integrated planning with cost centers and business process. This is basically for orders and projects. So in the case of orders, if you want to have cost center planning to be considered, then we will be using these step. Normally we don't touch this because we don't plan separate planning for projects using the cost center. So we don't do that. This is for real estate. that is not required, and resource planning is for different purpose we are not touching at the moment. Now, coming to the price calculation, one important point here we will have to consider is in the case of actuals, how do you want to revalue? This is important in the case of product costing. This is very, very important in the product costing. So while calculating the actual activities, so system expects some method to be followed here. If you say just don't re don't revalue, then system will throw up an error. So do you want to use own business transaction, or do you want to use the original business transaction? Which one do you want to consider? So what are these business transactions? These are the business transactions that we have seen just before. While maintaining the number ranges for controlling, we have seen some business transactions. This is about that. Okay, I'm putting it as a original business transaction method. I'll say cumulative price, and I will say in the case of plan, I'm saying it as average price. So this cost component structure and its split that we will be discussing during the product costing. So we don't have to do anything here. We don't have to activate anything here. That's it. Just save it. Okay, so here in the version we have maintained a zero version. Maintaining a version is mandatory, zero version, and if you want you can create other versions. I mean, as I said, for monthly you can have one version, for quarterly you can have another version, and while 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 taking up the reports using this version, we can able to see the relevant planning details. Any questions? Okay, so the next we have is the delta. It's not moving. Okay, moving. So delta version, business transaction from reference version. Just double click on that, navigation not permitted because it requires some other activation. We can see that later. Next, settings for progress analysis. This is in the case of project system. So we are not going to touch this. And as I mentioned, this is in the case of settings in operating concern. If you select this, navigation not permitted. Why? Because this requires some settings on the operating concern. Basically, the operating concern needs to be activated. So we can do this activity during the operating concern activation. So similarly, in the case of profit center also, if I just double click on that, navigation not permitted. Okay, that's it. Back. Okay, so this is activated from 2019, and you will have to do the same setting for other fiscal years as well, other accounting years as well. It means we will not be touching anything here. This is the same thing, but in the case of price calculation, you will be selecting own original business transaction or own business transaction. Own business transaction in the sense it uses it, I mean, for revaluation purpose, there is a separate business transaction. We can use that, or we can use that properties, or we can use the original business transaction properties. What are all these that you will understand little detail when we are doing the product costing. Back. Okay, so this is about version. Zero is the version which is a mandatory to maintain, and all other versions are optional. So based on the requirement, you can create back. But the important thing is whatever the version that we are maintaining here, you cannot see them in the AC doc P. There are two important tables. Okay, so important tables in S4 HANA AC Doka, and the other one is AC Doc P. Okay, so AC Doka for all are actual transactions. Okay, actual transactions, whatever the transactions we are posting, all will go and update AC Doka. But whereas AC Doc P is for planning. So if you are if you are creating any planning data using these versions, you will not be able to see that in AC Doc P. You have separate tables to view them, but if you want to see AC Doc P, we have a new concept called we have a new concept called categories. Within that planning, you can find categories. So maintain category for planning. If you maintain any planning, it works similar to the version. It is the same as version, and here also you can create multiple categories, one for monthly, the other for quarterly, the other for half yearly, and the other for yearly. Or if you have anything else, you can create those many categories, and whatever the planning we maintain for this, all will get updated in AC Doc P. That is the main difference between ECC and S4. In S4, we have two new table, AC Doc AC Doca, we call it as, the other one is AC Doc P. So these are the two additional tables we can see. And other tables such as BSEG is not, I mean, still we can see BSEG, but slowly in further versions, you will not be able to see BSEG, but we can still find BKPF. BKPF for header information and all the line items that you can see in AC Doka. So what my point here is versions will not get updated in AC Doc P. It will have the other tables where you can find it out. In order to have AC.P to be updated, we will have to use categories that we can see little later. And for this, I don't know whether we have a transaction code, but we have one Fiori app for this. Okay, so we will see that part little later. Okay, that's about the version point. Next, define ledger for CO version. This is the new step that we have in S4 HANA. Just execute. Here, for our controlling area, which ledger do you want to consider? What does it mean? So as we have seen different, the ledgers, it means leading ledger, non-leading ledger. We have different other, you know, we have different ledgers, right? Leading, non-leading, and we have extension ledger, we have simulation ledger, we have predictive ledger, we have different ledgers and parallel ledgers, right? Parallel ledgers. So do you want to use ledger, leading ledger or parallel ledger? What exactly this means is, when we are posting a transaction in finance, let me take up something on this. Suppose I have 0L as my leading ledger, okay, and I can say 2L my non-leading ledger, 3L my non-leading ledger, 4L my non-leading ledger. Let's say I have these four ledgers. Now I'm posting a transaction in FI. I'll be posting multiple transactions in FI. Right. So the moment I post FI transaction, by default, it gets updated in all ledgers. It gets updated in all ledgers. And here, these are all called ledgers. Okay. By default, all these ledgers will get updated because these four are linked to our company code. Now, the same company code I'm using while posting FI document. So when I'm posting a FI document, it gets updated in all ledgers. What are these ledgers? Why do we require ledgers? Basically, to show our financial statements specifically. Specifically in the sense, let's say in India, we are following Companies Act. It means I have certain rules which I want to maintain to produce my books to the company's board. Companies Act, as per Companies Act. Okay, I want to show I want to show all my financial statements at Companies Act level. It means I have to follow certain rules to have the reports maintained at a Companies Act. But for I have something else. I have some other reports where I want to show my books in IFRS. As per IFRS, I want to show. Maybe you can find some difference in depreciation rate. Maybe I have some transactions which I have to post this 2L only as per the IFRS process. And I may have something like Indian gap. I may have to show my financial statements as per financial gap. What exactly the difference in these? There should be some differences among these three. Anything could be a interest rate, could be a tax rate, could be a VAT tax, could be a sales tax, or could be a depreciation rate. You will find some differences. If all these are the same, I mean, if there are no changes in that, we don't require to create the ledgers. Parallel ledgers are not at all required since 0L will take care of that part and there is no change in these cases. Just we can create one ledger which will suffice all these. But that is not the right. That is not the true. You will find some differences in these three options. So in order to meet their requirements, we will be creating additional ledgers called parallel ledgers. Okay, parallel ledger. So this is what basically the concept of parallel ledger. Now there is another concept called ledger groups. Ledger groups. It means I have I have some transaction codes where I want to post some transaction. I mean, why I require a transaction code? Let us say I have to post some transactions in 0L, but I don't want those transactions to be updated in other ledgers. Or I want to post some transactions in 2L and 3L, which I don't want to get updated in 4L and 0L. I want certain transactions which I want to post in 2L and 4L. I don't want these transactions to get updated in other ledgers. How can I make a differentiation in such a case? As I said, the moment I post any transaction in FI, the data gets updated in all these four ledgers. But I want to have certain transactions to be posted exclusively in one ledger or multiple ledgers. How can I make a difference using the ledger group concept? So in the ledger group, I will club few of the ledgers. I'll say one ledger group. I can say one code for this. Within this code, I have these two ledgers and I have another code where I have 0L and 3L and I have other code where I have 0L comma 4L and let's say 2L. Okay, or I may have another code where I have 0L only my ledger. Okay, it means I have certain transactions which I want only in 0L. Then I have to create a separate ledger group for that. Suppose if you have some certain transactions, those are to get updated only in 2L, you will be creating one more ledger group. So in finance, we have certain other transaction codes. There you can give this ledger group code. The moment you give a ledger group, and when I'm posting the transaction, it gets updated only in those ledger groups. Okay, that is the concept of ledger groups. Now, my point here, why we have this ledger point here in the controlling. Now, which transactions do you want me to show in controlling? Which transactions do you want me to be there in the controlling? Do you want me to consider 0L transactions, 2L transaction, 3L, or 4L? Which data do you want be updated in controlling? So you will have to consider the relevant ledger. That is the concept of this thing. It means if I post any transaction into to hello, can you hear me? Hello,
Yes,
hello.
Nanda, we
Yeah,
can hear you.
yeah. I think it is lost. I mean, the remote desktop is lost, so I got probably had some issue from my end. Okay, got it. Okay, so it means I have certain other transactions which are getting updated in 2L. So if I mention 0L over here, it means only 0L transactions will get updated over here. It will not get updated 2L transactions, exclusive 2L transactions or exclusive 3L transactions. Those will not get updated. Only 0L transactions will get updated. So 0L is the leading ledger. It is a mandatory to create 0L to be assigned to our company code, which is mandatory, for us. Of course, it happens automatically, but which is a mandatory thing. Creating the parallel ledger is an optional. Based on your requirement, reporting requirements, we will be creating those many non-leading ledgers. So my point here is, so for our controlling area, which ledger do you want to consider? That is a mean. And legal valuation. What is this legal valuation? We have three types of valuations: legal valuation, group valuation, profit center valuations. Okay, these three things we will cover. I mean, little part of it in the material ledger, but there is a separate concept called transfer pricing. There you can find the importance of these three. Of course, we will be not covering the transfer pricing at the moment, but if at all I get a chance to go through them, I will go through them, because I did not work. Frankly, I had a chance to, you know, study on that, but I really don't have any exposure. Very rarely we'll find in our project. So, if at all we have an opportunity, so we will discuss the transfer pricing, and we will discuss during that. Okay, so that's about these parties. Now I'm just selecting our company code. So if I scroll up little, I'm not finding 1248 here. Okay, so it means I will have to do, for that reason we have new entries here. Select new entries, you can go with that. Okay, select new entries, you can pick up all of them, or you can just copy from the existing. You can just copy the select one and click on copy. You can just have to select our controlling area. You can do in either the way. So I'm going into new entries. I'll say our controlling area is 1248, and what is the version that we are considering? 0. And what is the ledger that we are considering? 0L. Okay, so I have everything here and just save. Okay, so we have got our controlling area mapped here within this, and it means all my 0L transactions are getting updated in the controlling, are getting updated in the controlling. Earlier in the ECC version, of course, we have 0L transactions are getting updated, not other parallel ledgers. But in S4 HANA, we have an option to consider other than 0L. That is the flexibility we have in S4. But typically in ECC also, the data relevant to 0L uh, are getting updated into controlling. That's a default. We are not doing any step for that. That's a standard behavior of the SAP system. But in S4 system, we have a separate step for this to show if at all you want to consider other than the leading ledger. You have an option to select here the ledger, but whereas in ECC, there was no option. It was 0L, default 0L. Back. Any questions here? Okay, now cost element accounting. As I mentioned, when do we call a particular GL as cost element? The moment we assign cost element category, whether it is a primary cost element or secondary cost element, that's immaterial. But from the controlling perspective, that is considered as a cost element. And in what are all cases we will assign the cost element categories? When we observe the in finance, we will find multiple GLs such as asset GL, right? Liabilities GLs, expenses GLs, incomes GLs, right? We can find multiple uh, GLs, but all expenses and income GLs are considered here as a cost element. So that is the importance of cost element. Here there is nothing to do except the one here in the master data cost element. You can give a range, create cost element here and create cost element groups. Okay, create cost elements and create cost element groups. You can create cost elements using here, create primary cost element, change cost element, create secondary cost element. If I double click on the primary cost element, it is taking me to FS00. It is taking me to FS00 because in FS00 we will be creating the primary cost elements, right? Primary cost elements. Suppose if I want to do a secondary cost element, double click on that, it is again taking me to FS00. This was not the situation in the case of ECC. So what exactly the difference between secondary cost element and primary cost element? Of course, we have discussed little about it, but let's go further here. Now, here the expenses GLs or income GLs, when we are posting, those will get updated in controlling area. That's what we have mentioned, right? Using the primary cost element. So what does it mean? It means primary cost elements are basically created in finance and as well as the controlling, and the transactions happening from the other modules and entering into the controlling module. There we will find the primary cost element. What about the secondary cost element? Now, while posting the expenses transaction, expenses GL, it means expenses cost element, I will have to consider one object, it means cost center. So it means this transaction, particular transaction will go and sit in cost center. Now I want to move the value from this cost center to the other objects. Okay, I want to segregate, or I want to push the amount posted in cost center to profitability segment, or I want push this amount to an internal order. It means from one object to the other object, from production order to profitability, from internal order to profitability, from cost center to profitability, cost center to production order. So if I want to move the values from one object to the other object, there I require secondary cost elements. There I require secondary cost elements. So moving of the data from one object to the other object requires a secondary cost element. Moving of the data from other modules to the controlling area, we require primary cost element. So how does the system understand whether it is a primary cost element or secondary cost element? Based on the cost element category. So the basic difference between ECC and S4 is that in ECC we never used to create a GL for secondary cost element, but here in S4 for every secondary cost element we require a GL in finance. We require a GL in finance. Okay, so that is the main purpose of secondary cost element. So now we'll go back to here. Now what I'm trying to tell you here is create primary cost element. If you double click here on this, even in ECC, it will take us to FS00, FS00. Now if I go back and double click on the secondary cost element, in ECC it was not the case. Okay, it was not going to FS00, but in S4 it is, because we need to have a GL for secondary cost elements. Back, change cost element. Again, it is going into this thing. That's fine. I mean, this is again the standard. ECC also happens the same thing. Only the difference here is the secondary cost element. Close it. Okay, this is for cost elements. And create cost element groups. It does not require to create right away here. You can create wherever is required. And what is the purpose of cost element group? Suppose I want to see a cost center report, cost center report, and let's say I have this thing. Let's say I have a cost center, XYZ is my cost center, and posted uh, salaries, let's say 4 lakh GL. These are all the GLs, and 4 lakh 100, 4 lakh 500, 4 lakh 600, and 4 lakh 900. Let us assume I have posted, let's say 100 here, 110 here, 120 here, 130 here, 140 here. This is my cost center. These are all my cost elements, and these are all the amounts posted. Okay, now in a cost center report, I want to see XYZ cost center line items. Okay, this is what the cost center. Now If I don't enter any cost element, if I don't enter any cost elements in XYZ, I can able to see all these transactions. I can able to see all these transactions, but there are situations like I want to see only these three GLs. Now, in such a case, if you go here, you can see a range of cost elements. You have an option to select a range of cost elements or one cost element, or you can select a group. So I will create a group of cost elements considering these three cost elements. So instead of selecting a range, if I select a range 4 lakhs to 4 lakh 900, I can able to see all, but I don't want to see all. I want just these three. So I'll be creating a separate group for these three items. And in the group, the moment I select the code of these three cost element groups, I would be able to see 130, 140, and 100. So this is again for reporting purpose. Remember, hierarchies, cost center groups, cost center, I mean cost element groups, all these profit center groups, all these for reporting purposes. Okay, going back. So I'm not going to create anything over here, right? So there is nothing here in this, and accrual calculation is not required now. Now information, this is for reporting purposes. We can see them later. So typically we are not doing anything in the cost element accounting because the primary cost, secondary cost, we are doing it in the FS00, and cost element group will be created wherever is required. I'll show you how to create there itself. That's it. There is nothing here in the cost element accounting. Now, cost center accounting. So why I'm doing cost center accounting and profit center accounting? Because once I complete these these topics, I'll go back to the GL accounts, start posting the transactions with cost centers, profit center. You will understand more clearly. That is the reason why I'm taking up cost center and profit center. Okay, right. So cost center accounting. As I said, at the time of general ledger activating components, you have an option to activate components from here, right? So maintain controlling area, select our controlling area 1248 and select our controlling area, activate components. We have activated cost center. You can activate from here or you can activate from the respective place also. So that is the place we have here. Now in cost center accounting, if you see activate cost center accounting in controlling area. Path is IMG controlling cost center accounting, activate cost center accounting in controlling area. Just execute here. You can see the same 1248. Select 1248. You can see the same here. Go to details. You will be finding this assignment of company code. You will be finding activate components. You can see here and simply you can activate from here also. So since we have already activated, it is not required to be done here. Next, enterprise structure. Of course, it is not the required point at the moment. Now, let's get into the master data. Okay, let's get into the master data. I'm just creating whatever is required at the moment because I'm not touching the planning. I'm not touching the actual postings now. I'm not at all touching, because there are certain month-end activities from the cost center perspective, which we will be discussing over here. If you see here, we have periodic reposting, assessment, distribution. We have different options for the month-end activities. I'm not going to discuss this thing. So I'm going to discuss that during the controlling series of steps, series of classes. Okay, so master data. So here, just create the cost center master back. Expand this. You can see categories. We have seen earlier cost element categories. Now we can see cost center categories. What is the importance of cost center categories? Before we get into that, we can see the cost center hierarchy also. Okay, we can see the cost center hierarchy. We have created one cost center hierarchy, right? In general, here in the maintain controlling area, if you select to 1248, we have created one. Selecting the same thing, going into details, we have created a cost center category, right? We have created a cost center category. Sorry, hierarchy, cost center standard hierarchy, and we have not maintained any description. So either you can do it from here, or you can do it some other place. Let me open that. Okay, I'm coming out from here, going into accounting, controlling, cost center accounting, master data, standard hierarchy, OKEON. If you see over here, there is no option to create. It means the standard hierarchy has to be created in the controlling area only. We don't have an option to create over here. So just select here, and here we can see 1248 underscore CC. You can maintain the description. Standard hierarchy for 1248. Just save. Just save. Saved it. Now I can create the standard hierarchy. As I said, what basically the standard hierarchy is, how do we use this hierarchies? Not only the standard hierarchy, basically what is an hierarchy? Okay, as I said, basically hierarchy is used for reporting purpose. This is on the top we have, and I'm just giving an example. Okay, okay, just giving an example. Let's say product cost centers. I will take up the other way. So I have different cost centers. Okay, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, J. So these are all my cost centers. These are all my cost centers. Okay, these are all my cost centers. And I'll say these are all there in the production department, and these are all there in the office. Okay, these are all there in the office. Then what I can do, so these are all my office cost centers, right? These are all my office cost centers, whereas these are all my production cost centers. Okay, production cost centers, and these are all my office cost centers. Now what I'm going to do, what my requirement is, I may see my cost center reports individually for each of the cost centers. Or I may I may want to see all the cost centers, all the departments, whatever we have in production, I may want to see them. Or I may want to see ABC as one, DE as another one. It means what I will do for ABC, I'll create one group, and for DE, I'll create another group. Okay, so what I will do in such a case, I will create one this thing as production one, I will say the other one as production two. Okay, now I may want to see both of them at one level. Okay, I will create another one, say as production. It means within XYZ, this is my standard hierarchy. Within that, I have production and something here. Within the production, I have production one, production two. Within the production one, I have these many cost centers, and within the production two, I have these many cost centers. This is what we call it as hierarchy. Why do we require a hierarchy? So I want to see all my production cost centers values. Then I don't have to select all of them manually or range or something else. If I just consider production, I would be able to see the details of all these cost centers. Or if I just select PROD1, I would be able to see the results of all these three cost centers. That is the main purpose of this. Okay, that is the main purpose of this. Okay, that's about the hierarchy. Okay, the other point is the cost center. What are these cost centers? Cost centers are nothing but departments. In our regular terminology, we call it as department. Human resource department. What they do, they are involved in the recruitment process. We have accounts department. What do? They are involved in maintaining the books. Sales department, they are always involved in the selling activities. Production department, they involve in the production, right? So each of these departments is considered as a cost center. Simply, what is cost center? The place where expenses are incurred. Only expenses. The center where costs are happening. Cost center. So cost center does not capture revenues. Important. Remember this point. Okay. We will not post revenues to a cost center. We will consider cost center for all expenses. Only in the case of expenses, we will be considering the sorry, cost centers. Okay, that is the meaning of cost center. Of course, we have an option to consider revenues also for cost centers, but typically, I mean, fundamentally, that is not the right one. That is not the right approach. Okay, so that's about the production departments and service department and hierarchy. So let's come back to the standard hierarchy 1248. I think it is struck. Okay, so that is the meaning of a standard hierarchy. So hierarchy talks about the the levels of cost centers or groups that can be shown in a typical sequential order. That is what we call it as the standard hierarchy. Hello, are you all there?
Yes, Nanda.
Yeah. Okay, so here we have an option to consider, right? So now here you have an option to create the groups. It means cost center top one is this hierarchy, and below to that you have groups. So you can create groups either from here. You have an option to create lower level group, and that way you can create, or at the time of creating itself the groups creating, we can mention. I'll show you there are two ways to do that. Either you can maintain the groups from here, or from the configuration. I'll show you that. So yeah, define cost center groups. So I missed to mention about the cost center categories. Okay, so what are these categories? What is cost element category? Cost element category. Based on the cost element category, system recognizes whether it is an expenses or income, or whether it is a primary cost element or secondary cost element, right? We have seen just a little while ago, while creating a material consumption account, we have considered cost element category as one. One stands for primary cost. It means it's an expenditure. The moment we consider 12, it is nothing but sales discount. The moment we consider 11, it is considered as a revenue. Similarly, we have for secondary cost elements also, for secondary cost elements. So based on the cost element category, system understand the type of the cost element. I mean, whether it is a primary cost element or secondary cost element. Within the primary cost element, whether it is an expenses, sales discount, or revenue, right? So in the same way, cost center category, what basically it tells the system is whether it is a production cost center, administration cost center, sales cost center, or any kind of cost center. That will tell, I mean, the cost center categories will tell the system that is this cost center is something about that. Okay, just execute. Apart from that, it also controls the functional area. Functional area is nothing but a cost of sales accounting that we will see little later. Okay, functional area basically talks about the cost of sales accounting. Okay, cost of sales accounting, periodic accounting, cost of sales account. There are two types of methods of posting the transactions that we will see later. Now, if you see over here, these are all the cost element categories. Of course, I think the first two are the created ones. I think 9 is also the standard one. I'm not sure, but yeah. Here, if you see over here, suppose if I pick up a production cost center category, F is the production category. It takes care of the quantity. It allows the actual revenues, planned revenues, and commitment item. Commitment item is for budgets. We will ignore that part. Now, what are all it is considering this cost element category? Since it is a production will have production cost center will have a quantity. So that is the reason why it is selected. If you don't select it, means quantities are not at all accepted for this cost center category. And actual revenues, it means this category is required while creating the cost center master. Cost element category is required while creating the GL master. Similarly, the cost element category is required while creating the cost center. So if I consider this cost center in a particular cost center, the cost center will accept only the actual revenues. Okay, it it considers the actual revenues. Sorry, actual revenues will be, one second. I'm sorry. So here, this the selection of this thing is nothing but a blocking. It means it will not allow. So the cost center, whatever the cost center I'm creating using this cost element category, that cost center will not hold any quantity values, and it will not accept any revenue items, actual revenues. It will not consider actual revenues. It means what are all it is accepting? It is accepting the actual primary cost, actual secondary cost, or plan primary cost, plan secondary cost. So this cost element category, using this cost element category, whatever the cost centers that we are creating, that will not allow you to consider quantity, actual revenue, planned revenue, and commitment items. So it means those cannot be posted into those cost centers. Clear? Let me repeat this. So let me go into the cost center master just to understand, just to show you the what do you call the cost center thing. Okay, here I'm just putting something, and I'll say 2019 1 2 3 4. I'll say 0101 2019. I'm just entering. Here you can see now the cost center category. This is a required entry, right? And here we will be selecting the relevant category, production or something else. It means whatever the category that we are considering in this cost center will control what items are allowed to post. It means this will be allowed to post only the actual primary cost, actual secondary cost, plan primary cost, plan secondary cost. It means you will not be allowed to post commitment items, planned revenue, actual revenue, and quantity. Clear?
Yes. So basically, this is kind of field status, right? For cost center,
Master data.
master data,
Perfect.
right?
Yes. Okay. Cost center, master data. Perfect. Yes. Okay. So no questions, right? Okay, fine. Next, here we have an option to create define cost center groups. Define cost center groups. So either you can create cost center groups from here, or you can create, as I mentioned in the cost center hierarchy, you can create from here also. Wherever you create, it gets updated in both the places. I'll show you. I'm coming out from here. I'll be creating one cost center group from here. Okay. So define cost center group, path is the same, just execute. Create cost center group, double click on this. Now, what is a cost center group that I want to create? This is already there. If I just enter, it says the object already exists. Okay. Right. So what I will be doing, I will say production. Okay. Enter. I will say production cost center group. Okay. Just saving. And here you can assign the cost centers also. Just select this, you can assign cost centers. Of course, we don't have cost center master and we cannot assign here. Okay, so I've created this production cost center group. Okay, save it. Okay, now if I say again, the object already exists. Okay, now I'm going back to the change. This is what my production cost center group. Right. Or I can do it from here, from the easy access. OKEON change here, and within that lower group, I will just mention as production cost center group. You can find it over here. It means you will be maintaining it directly in the standard hierarchy here. Save it. Right. And if you want to create one more group within this, so select this production and select it here. Select group at same level. Do you want to create lower level or at the same level? I'm saying same level. What I'll say, service, service cost center group, just saving, just save. Now within the production group, again I want to create two more. So lower group, not at the same level. So select lower level group. I'll say PROD1 production 1 group, and I want to create one more at the same level. So prod 1, I'm selecting same level, prod 2. Our product to group. Let's maintain the same description. Okay, save group. And within this, within the production group, let's say we have cost centers. Now, while creating the cost center, we will have to assign this group. You can find it over here. In the cost center, you have an option to select hierarchy. Here, you will have to select the relevant group. Then accordingly, system considers. Okay, so I'm just not doing anything over here. We'll go back to the cost center change. Here I've selected. Then similarly, I want to create two more groups under service. So below to that, so group lower level group, I'll say serve service service one group. And at the same level, I want to create one more group at the same level. So two service to group. Save. That's it. So under the hierarchy, we have created these. Okay. So under this hierarchy, we have two main groups. Under each of these two groups, we have two more subgroups. This is what basically the standard hierarchy. This is what basically the hierarchy. Okay, it has to come, but don't know, but it has to come. That's fine. Okay, so this is what basically the hierarchy is. Okay, and the next we have here in the car center. That's all in the cost center basically. So this is about the cost center. Now let me create two or one cost center just to have an idea. To create a cost center, the path for this is cost center. We have to be in cost center master data, cost center, individual processing, KS01. The path for this is easy access, accounting, controlling, cost center, accounting, master data, cost center, individual processing, and KS01 create. Remember, for each of these activities, it means the activities which we are doing from the easy access will have one Fiori app. For each of these activities, we should be having one Fiori app. It means the expectation in S4 HANA not to use GUI, use only the Fiori apps, but Fiori apps, taking up the Fiori apps, it will take little more time. It it is not that much fast as we have in GUI. Okay, so I'm just creating KS01. I'll I'm just saying 1000. Okay, I'll just say 1000. Enter. I'll say production cost center, production cost center, and here person responsible, the in charge of this department, let's say X. Cost center category we have seen, since it is a production, select the production relevant category. And hierarchy, I would say product prod one. And normally we will have to consider profit center. Yes, once we create our profit center, we will come back here and we'll maintain the profit center. Just save. And similarly, I'll create 2000. Okay, I'll put cost center 2, and I will say Y here, and here hierarchy, I would be selecting product 2. Business area is out of date. I mean, it is no more be used. And functional area comes automatically based on the functional area assigned in this cast element category. Whatever we have here, the same thing will get updated. Okay, so that's it. Save. Why we have not updated? Because we have not activated functional area, I mean cost of sales accounting. So save it. Okay, so I would say 6000 for service, CC1, A, and since it is A, let me pick up the different category. I will say logistics, and I would say the serve one. Save. Next is 7000, 2 here, again 2 here, and I'll say B. I will say car center category as management. Okay, and serve 2 I will select as a group. save. Now when I go back here in the standard hierarchy, I can see now the details. I can see these details. Okay, so this is what basically cost center hierarchy. So what I'm going to do is I will be creating few GLs today. Okay, I'll create some data ready. Tomorrow we will be discussing the profit center accounting. Okay, just we will create some profit centers and we'll start posting the transactions. We will see from tomorrow. Any questions?
No, Nanda.
I think it is little heavy today, today's class, but you know, we have Saturday, Sundays, right? So yeah, we can manage our timings.
I think
So
controlling is more challenging than finance.
whatever we have discussed, there is nothing actually, right? There is nothing.
No,
Yeah.
yeah.
So, but when we come to the product costing and also probably I will not take 2 hours because that's going to be little overburden to you. Let's take 1 hour. I mean, I'll see. I mean, wherever is little tough topic, I will not take too much session. I'll cut the session. Okay. I'll cut the session. I mean, I'll break into different sessions. Okay. So any further questions? Are you all there?
Yes, Nanda, I'm here.
Right. How about the
I
others?
don't know.
Okay, so I don't think we have any questions. If at all you have any questions, I can either you can put in that WhatsApp group or we can discuss them in our next session. Thank you. So tomorrow at same time, 7 PST.
No, no, no. Tomorrow is Monday.
Yeah, Monday 7 p.m. PST.
Oh, 7 p.m. Oh, okay. All right.